Snow swallowed, sound away a grave swallow's light. And Officer Daniel Hale had always hated that kind of quiet. The kind that made a man hear things he wasn't ready to face. His K-9 partner, Shadow, padded ahead to the wind-carved drifts, nose low, breath rising in sharp clouds. The footprints they followed appeared suddenly at the tree line, as if someone had stepped out of nothing. Bare feet, small, child-size. Daniel had seen a lot in 12 years on the force. But something about those prints gnawed at him. A reminder of the night he'd failed someone he loved. And Shadow felt it too. If you enjoy stories told with care and patience, stick around. It helps when people stay with the storyteller. The call came in just after dawn, drifting through the radio with the kind of static that made every word feel heavier. Possible missing juvenile. Last seen near Ridgewater Road. Father says she ran out during an argument. Timestamp 0340. Daniel rubbed the bridge of his nose. Arguments turning into disappearances weren't rare in rural areas, but Ridgewater wasn't just rural. It was forgotten. A long strip of broken cabins and abandoned hunting trails stretched along the foothills like a scar. The storm that rolled in overnight had blanketed everything in thick layers of snow, erasing clues faster than any suspect could. Shadow sat beside him in the passenger seat, tail stiff, ears pricked. The dog sensed urgency before Daniel even turned the cruiser toward the ridge. "Yeah," Daniel murmured, as if answering a question no one asked. "I feel it too." He didn't realize his fingers were trembling on the wheel until he tightened them. Winter did that to him. Or maybe it was the memories Winter dragged up. He shook it off. The father, the cabin belonging to Jack Mercer, sat crooked on a rise overlooking a sparse line of trees. Smoke curled from the chimney. Yet the place looked cold, isolated in a way that wasn't just about the weather. Jack waited on the porch, shoulders hunched, face red from more than windburn. His eyes were swollen, like he'd been up all night. "You Hale?" Jack called out before Daniel even killed the engine. "Officer Hale," Daniel corrected gently, stepping out. "This is K-9 Shadow. You reported your daughter missing." Jack nodded, wiping his nose with the back of his hand. "Sawyer, she's 10. I told her she couldn't go out after midnight. She got upset. I heard the door slam. I thought she'd just cool off outside. But after an hour," Jack swallowed, voice cracking. "No tracks. She was barefoot, Daniel." Shadow let out a low, throaty sound. Not a growl, something more like concern. Daniel crouched in front of the cabin steps, studying the snow. Wind scarring. Drifts layered unevenly. Even a deer print wouldn't survive more than 30 minutes in this weather. So how did Shadow find a scent? The dog tugged on the lead, nose sweeping left toward the tree line. "Shadow's got something," Daniel said. "We'll need anything of Sawyer's. Worn clothes preferred." Jack's eyes flicked toward the door, then back to the trees. I'll get it," he said. But the hesitation lasted just long enough to poke at Daniel's instincts. "Guilt, or something like it. Everything okay?" Daniel asked quietly. Jack stiffened. "Just worried for my kid," he said, too sharp and too fast. He disappeared into the cabin without waiting for a response. Daniel exhaled, watching the uneasy way the man moved. Something was off, though he couldn't yet put a name to it. When Jack returned with a sweater, Daniel let Shadow take a deep inhale. The dog's entire posture changed, focused, tense, urgent. Then Shadow pulled hard toward the woods, and the footprints appeared. The first sign. Daniel stared at the snow for a long moment, letting the shape fully register. A small foot, toes splayed from cold, pressed deep enough that the snow hadn't reclaimed it yet. Impossible. The storm hadn't let up until sunrise. These prints were no older than an hour, maybe less. "Sawyer," Daniel called out softly into the trees. Only wind answered, rattling frozen branches overhead like bones clicking together. Shadows surged forward, pulling Daniel down the narrow path. Jack jogged behind them. "She's close," Jack insisted breathlessly. "She has to be." But the footprints didn't match desperation. They weren't erratic or panicked. They were steady, measured, as if the child. if it was a child, had simply walked barefoot into the heart of the woods with purpose. How far do these trails go? Daniel asked. Jack slowed. A few miles. But there's nothing back there. No houses. No shacks. Just an old hunting cabin. Abandoned. Been empty 20 years. Something tightened around Daniel's ribs. The prince led straight toward it. Memory in the snow. As they walked, a memory pushed itself into Daniel's mind, uninvited. A similar snowstorm years ago. His little sister Emily's laughter echoing in the woods behind their childhood home. And then silence, a branch snapping. His father calling her name with a fear Daniel hadn't understood until it was too late. Emily's loss had carved a fault line in their family that never healed. He pushed the memory away, focusing on Shadow's steady gait. Easy, Daniel whispered. We'll find her. He wasn't sure if he was talking to Jack, Shadow, or himself. Disturbing clues. The footprints changed the deeper they went. Wider spacing. Longer strides. Still barefoot, but no sign of stumbling or cold-induced collapse. A child couldn't walk this cleanly through snow that deep. Shadow slowed suddenly, tail lowering, not from losing the scent but from unease. What is it, boy? Daniel asked. Shadow's nose dipped toward a broken branch. Frozen blood dotted the bark. Jack's breath hitched. Oh, God, is that... Animal, not human, Daniel said quickly. Colors too dark. Probably deer or fox. But Shadow didn't act like it was just wildlife. He circled the tree twice, then stared into the woods with a rigid intensity that made Daniel's skin prickle. Something else was out there, watching. The cabin. They saw it only when they were nearly upon it. Camouflaged by pine and shadow, the old hunting cabin sagged under snow, like a forgotten tomb. Windows cracked, door crooked, a rusted lantern hook swayed in the wind. The footprints led straight to the entrance. Shadow whimpered softly, ears flat. Daniel felt that same pressure in his chest. The kind of instinct you didn't learn, you inherited. Jack, he said quietly, stay back. Jack stepped closer instead. That's my daughter in there. Then let me make sure it's safe first. Jack clenched his jaw, but didn't argue. Daniel approached slowly, every step deliberate. His breath fogged in front of him as he reached for the door. It opened with a whisper, the hinges creaking like something waking up. Police, Daniel called softly. Sawyer, I'm here to help. Silence. Then Shadow barked sharply. Daniel's flashlight beam skated across the floor and landed on a small figure sitting against the far wall. A girl, barefoot, skin pale as the snow outside, eyes wide and unblinking. Sawyer, but she didn't look frightened, or cold, or even surprised to see them. She looked expectant, as if she'd been waiting. Daniel dropped to one knee, lowering his voice. Sawyer, I'm Officer Hale. Your dad's here. You're safe now. She tilted her head slowly, too slowly. I know who you are, she whispered. Daniel froze. Her voice didn't match the trembling child her father described. This was calm, controlled, empty. Shadow growled, a deep, warning rumble that Daniel had only heard twice before. Once during a drug bust that went sideways, and once at a crime scene he still had nightmares about. Sweetheart. Jack breathed behind him, voice cracking with relief. Oh, thank God. Sawyer's eyes shifted toward her father, and in one chilling, unnatural moment, she smiled. Not like a child, like someone mimicking a child. Daniel's pulse hammered. Something was wrong. Very wrong. He moved slightly in front of Jack without realizing. Sawyer, he said softly, how long have you been out here? She blinked once. Then again. Then, I didn't walk here. Daniel's skin crawled. He glanced at the footprints, the ones leading straight to the cabin. What do you mean? He asked carefully. Sawyer's gaze drifted toward the back wall, where the boards were warped and blackened by rot. The man brought me, she said. He said you'd follow the prints. He said you always follow footprints. Daniel went still. What man? Jack whispered, voice cracking in panic. Who was with you? Sawyer didn't look at him. She looked at Daniel. You know him. Ice crawled up Daniel's spine. Shadow barked suddenly, lunging toward the back wall, because something behind it moved. Something slow, deliberate, alive. A hollow knocking echoed from behind the boards, soft but unmistakable. 3 knocks, then a voice, low and familiar, seeped through the rotted wood. "Daniel, you're late again." Daniel's heart stopped. He knew that voice. He'd heard it the night Emily died, and every night since. For a second, maybe 2, Daniel couldn't breathe. The voice behind the wall carried the rasp of age, but the rhythm was the same slow, deliberate cadence echoing from the woods all those years ago, drifting toward a 12-year-old boy who didn't understand that the sound he heard wasn't the wind. "Daniel, you're late again." His stomach lurched. No, impossible. Shadow snarled, pulling hard toward the warped boards, claws scraping the floor. Jack stumbled backward. "Who the hell is that?" "Sawyer, who was with you? Tell me now." Sawyer didn't answer. Her eyes stayed locked on Daniel, as if the man behind the wall wasn't just connected to him, but tethered to him. Daniel forced himself to stand. "Jack, take Sawyer outside. Now." Jack's voice wavered. "I'm not leaving her." "Then keep her behind you and don't let her near that wall." Daniel snapped, sharper than intended. Sawyer moved only her eyes, following Jack as he grabbed her arm and pulled her toward the door. Her expression didn't change. Not fear, not confusion. Just watching. Daniel stepped toward the wall, hand hovering over the butt of his gun. The boards bowed inward, as if someone leaned on them from behind. "Show yourself," Daniel said, voice low. "I'm giving you one warning." A dry chuckle leaked through the cracks. "Warnings, just like your father. Always too little, too late." That cold, sinking nausea punched through Daniel's chest again. He'd heard that tone the night Emily went missing. A stranger's voice drifting from between the trees, teasing, taunting. The police had searched for weeks, months. No suspect, no sign, just footprints that led nowhere. And yet, here was again that same voice, as if time had circled back to collect its debt. A thud slammed the wall, making dust fall in soft clouds. "You still don't understand, do you?" The voice said. "You never understood." Daniel backed up a step, raised his flashlight, scanning for a weak point in the boards. Shadow growled, hackles rising. Another thud, then silence. A long, waiting silence. Daniel edged to the left, keeping his gun angled down but ready. He ran a gloved hand along the wall. Cold, too cold, even for this weather. It felt like ice coming from inside the cabin itself. He pressed his ear to the wood. Nothing. No breath. No movement. No. A whisper. "She told me you come." Daniel jolted back. The board shifted. Not outward. Upward. As if someone was dragging them from inside, slowly lifting, revealing a dark crawl space. Shadow barked and lunged, but Daniel snapped, "Stay!" And the dog froze, vibrating with tension. The opening widened. Boot prints, large ones, appeared in the dust beneath the lifted board. Not footprints. Boot prints. Heavy ones. Daniel tightened his grip. A figure crouched inside the crawl space. A silhouette hunched in the shadows. Thin, tall, wrongly bent, like someone who'd spent too long underground. Then a pale hand reached forward, long fingers resting on the floorboards. "Daniel," the voice crooned. "Come now. You were so much braver as a child." The cold inside Daniel snapped into something sharp. "Who are you?" he demanded. The man chuckled. "Names complicate things. But you know me. You knew me the night the snow took your sister." The last thread of Daniel's restraint frayed. He moved in one swift motion, gun drawn, flashlight raised, stepping toward the crawl space. The beam caught the man's face for a fraction of a second. Enough. Sallow skin, hollow cheeks, a lattice of scars running from ear to jaw, eyes, gray and dead and flat, like a winter sky with no sun behind it. Daniel had never seen him before, but his voice belonged to a man in the woods the night Emily disappeared. The man who'd whispered to him, coaxing him deeper. "Get out! Daniel said. Hands where I can see them. The stranger smiled. You're still too late. Then he ducked backward into blackness, vanishing inside the cabin's walls. Damn it! Daniel lunged forward, but the crawl space snapped shut with a violent slam, the board dropping back into place, so cleanly it looked untouched. No seams, no hinges, no sign anyone had opened it at all. Shadow pawed the floor frantically, whining. Daniel pushed against the board, but it didn't budge. It felt fused, solid, impossible. He stepped back, breathing hard, mind racing. Jack's voice cut through the tension from the doorway. Officer Hale. She's saying strange things. Daniel turned. Sawyer stood in the snow, her bare feet untouched by frostbite, her skin pale but not shivering. Jack held her shoulders, but she didn't seem to feel his grip. She lifted her chin as Daniel stepped out of the cabin. He said you'd hear him again, she murmured. He said it had to be you. Daniel knelt in front of her, keeping his tone calm. Sawyer listened carefully. Did that man hurt you? She blinked slowly. He told me I shouldn't tell, or he'd take another one. Jack's face crumpled. Another child? Sawyer shook her head. Her eyes stayed pinned on Daniel. He said he'd take what you lost. Daniel's heart slammed painfully. Emily, where did he take you from? He asked. How long were you with him? Sawyer's lips parted, as if she were about to answer. Then her gaze shifted toward the tree line. He's still here, she whispered. Jack spun around, scanning the woods. Where is he? Daniel stood slowly, not because he saw the man, but because Shadow did. The dog's body snapped into a point, tail rigid, nose aimed at the dark trunks of the pine forest. Daniel followed the line of Shadow's stare. There, just beyond the fourth tree, a shape, tall, thin, still, watching. Daniel leveled his gun. Police, don't move. The figure didn't run. It turned, slowly, almost lazily. Then it walked deeper into the woods. Not fast, not fleeing, guiding, leading. Shadow barked and lunged forward. Shadow, heel! Daniel shouted. But the dog pulled free of the line Jack had stepped on, bolting after the figure. Shadow. Daniel ran after him, boots punching through the snow, adrenaline tearing through his veins. Jack yelled behind him. Daniel, don't leave us. Daniel wanted to stop, to stay, to protect them. But Shadow's bark echoed through the trees, sharp with alarm. And that decided everything. He sprinted into the woods. The chase. The forest swallowed sound quickly. Snow dampened footsteps, muffled echoes, turned the world into a muted maze of pale shadows and quiet danger. Shadow's barks grew sharper, aggressive, urgent. Then one sudden yelp cut through the air. Daniel's blood iced. Shadow, he roared, crashing through the brush. He reached a clearing. A ring of trees bent as though something heavy had pushed against them. Snow churned in frantic circles. Shadow stood with his front paws braced, growling at nothing. No figure. No footprints. No scent trail. Daniel skidded to a stop, chest heaving. What the hell? Shadow barked at the base of a tree, an old pine with a trunk split down the middle, its interior hollow and pitch black. Scratch marks lined the inside. Human scratch marks. Old ones. New ones. A fresh drop of blood clung to a splintered edge. Daniel's breath shook. Shadow back. The dog obeyed, but reluctantly. Daniel shone his flashlight inside the hollow trunk. Deep in the darkness, something glinted. Metal, a chain, and attached to it, fabric. A child's wool mitten, but not Sawyer's. Daniel reached in, fingers brushing the fabric. It was purple, just like Emily's. His heartbeat thrashed in his ears. No, he whispered. This couldn't be real. Emily's body was never found. Only her coat, only prints that vanished in the woods, as if she'd been lifted into thin air. And now her mitten, impossibly, sat inside a tree miles away from where she disappeared. A crunch of snow behind him snapped him back. He spun, gun raised. Jack stood at the edge of the clearing, breath ragged. Sawyer clutched his chest. "Daniel," he gasped, "we can't stay here. Something's wrong with her." Sawyer's head rested against Jack's shoulder, her eyes half-lidded. When Daniel approached, she opened them and smiled faintly. "He likes when you run," she whispered. "He said it makes the ending better." Jack stumbled back, horrified. What ending? "Daniel, what is she talking about?" Daniel didn't answer, because he didn't know. But he did know one thing. They needed to get out of the woods. "Jack, go back to your cabin. Lock the door. Do not open it for anyone but me." Jack's jaw clenched. "You're coming too." Daniel shook his head. "I need to figure out what we're dealing with." Jack stared at him, fear and distrust mixing into something brittle. "You knew that man," Jack said quietly. "Didn't you?" Daniel's pulse skipped. He said nothing. Jack swallowed. "What aren't you telling me?" Before Daniel could answer, Sawyer murmured, "He's here again." This time, Shadow didn't bark. He whimpered. Snow shifted behind the nearest tree, like something tall moved just out of sight. Jack's face drained the color. Without waiting for Daniel's instruction, he turned and ran, carrying Sawyer back toward the cabin. Daniel watched them disappear between the pines. Then the cold breath of wind brushed his ear. A whisper followed, closer than before. "You were 10 the first time you followed me. Let's see what you do now." Daniel spun toward the sound, but the woods were empty. Only Shadow stood with him, trembling, waiting. And somewhere deeper in those trees, someone laughed. The laughter slid to the trees like smoke, thin, drifting, impossible to pinpoint. It didn't echo. It didn't need to. It settled directly into Daniel's bones. Shadow pressed against Daniel's leg, trembling but ready. Loyal. Always loyal. "Easy," Daniel whispered. His breath fogged and curled upward, the air so cold it felt like knives dragging across his lungs. "He wants us to chase. He's been wanting that for a long time." Another laugh, softer this time. Closer. Shadow growled, moving ahead, one careful step at a time. His ears tracked something Daniel couldn't see. The forest felt wrong. Too still. Too watchful. The snow didn't fall normally. It drifted in slow spirals, as if the air itself had been disturbed. Daniel walked forward, scanning the trees. No footprints. No tracks. Just that voice humming between the trunks. "You remember the clearing where you lost her, don't you?" The voice purred. "Your father told you to stay put, but you followed me instead." Daniel's fingers tightened around his weapon. "Show yourself." Again with the orders, the man replied, amused. "You hail men never learned. You command everything but the things that matter." Daniel felt a familiar ache rise in his chest, the memory he spent years trying to starve. His father screaming Emily's name, tearing through the woods until his voice bled. The way Daniel, terrified and trembling, had pointed toward the direction of the whisper he heard, leading the search the wrong way. Hours lost. Maybe the difference between life and death. He swallowed hard, forcing his focus back. "You took her," Daniel said. "You took my sister." A low rumble answered from somewhere unseen. "Took? No, no, Daniel. Children come to me, just as you almost did, just as Sawyer did." Daniel's pulse pounded. "Sawyer didn't follow you. You took her." "Oh!" "Then how did she walk through a blizzard barefoot without freezing?" The voice tilted playfully. "Why don't you ask her what she remembers?" Daniel moved deeper into the woods, following Shadow's nose. The dog pulled him toward a narrow ravine, a place Daniel recognized immediately, though he'd hoped never to see it again. The same ravine search team swept the night Emily disappeared. The same ravine where they found her coat, inexplicably dry, free of snow, as if someone had placed it there gently. Daniel paused at the edge. Shadow whined. The woods behind him went silent. Too silent. Then Sawyer's voice drifted through the trees, not frightened but sing-song. "Officer Hale." Daniel spun. Sawyer stood alone at the tree line, barefoot in the snow, her nightgown fluttering like something underwater. Jack was nowhere in sight. Daniel's chest tightened. "Sawyer, where's your father?" She didn't blink. He tried to stop him, but he doesn't like when adults interfere. The cold under Daniel's feet felt suddenly sharp. Wrong. like the temperature had dropped 20 degrees in a single heartbeat. "Sawyer," he said carefully, "walk toward me, slowly." She shook her head. "He won't let me." A tall shadow shifted behind her. Daniel raised his gun. "Sawyer, get down." She didn't. Instead, she stepped aside, and the figure emerged. The man was taller than before, or maybe the distorted light made him seem that way. His coat hung loosely from a gaunt frame. His skin looked stretched, almost translucent, with veins snaking beneath it. But his eyes, gray, empty, void. He smiled softly. "Hello, Daniel." Daniel kept the gun steady. "She's coming with me." The man's smile widened, showing teeth too straight, too perfect. "Is that what you told yourself when Emily went into the woods? That you'd bring her back?" Daniel's jaw tightened. "Let her go." "I've never held her," the man said, genuinely confused. "She follows. They all follow." "They don't." Daniel stepped closer, gun unwavering. "You manipulate them. You lure them." The man tilted his head. "Words you use when you're afraid of your own failure." Shadow growled, baring his teeth. The man's eyes drifted to the dog. "Still relying on animals to do what you can't?" Daniel fired. A clean shot. Direct hit, or it should have been. The bullet passed through the man like smoke. The figure flickered, then re-solidified. Daniel's stomach dropped. "What are you?" he whispered. The man's smile returned, patient, almost fatherly. "I am nothing. That's why I need you." That last sentence struck Daniel like a blade. Not physically, but in the place where old guilt slept. The man stepped closer. Daniel stepped back. Snow shifted beneath his boots. They edged toward the slope of the ravine. Shadow barked wildly, circling between them, trying to protect Daniel. But Sawyer just watched. "Why me?" Daniel demanded. "What do you want?" "You've been walking behind me since the night you were 10, the man whispered. "You were ready then. You hesitated. Children hesitate. But men can choose." "Choose what?" The man smiled. "To follow." Daniel shook his head, breathing hard. "I'm not going anywhere with you. You're letting Sawyer walk into the woods alone. You're hurting families." "Families hurt themselves," the man cut in. "I just opened the door." Sawyer's voice floated gently. "Officer Hale." Daniel turned. She wasn't looking at him. She was looking at the ground, at something buried in the snow near the ravine's edge. He followed her gaze. A boot, attached to a leg, attached to a body. Jack, face down, still, half covered in snow. "No!" Daniel rushed forward, falling to his knees as he rolled Jack over. Jack's skin was pale, but warm, alive, barely. "Jack!" Daniel slapped his cheek. "Stay with me." Jack's eyes fluttered open. His breath shook violently. "He told me to give her back. I wouldn't. He showed me things, Daniel. Things I wasn't meant to see." Daniel grabbed his jacket. "I'm getting you and Sawyer out." Jack coughed, blood flecking his lip. "I tried, but she—" His eyes darted towards Sawyer. "She's not the same." Sawyer watched them with a serenity no child should possess. Daniel's throat tightened. "Sawyer, come here. Right now." She lifted her hand, small, pale, delicate. "Officer Hale," she whispered. "He says your sister is waiting." Daniel's heart stopped. The man's voice coiled behind him. "Go to her." "Emily's dead," Daniel forced out. "You killed her." The man stepped close enough that Daniel felt the cold radiating from him. "No, Daniel. She's exactly where you left her." Something snapped inside Daniel. Grief, rage, years of torment, every nightmare that dragged him back into the woods. He stood, gripping the gun with both hands. "You're not taking anyone else." The man nodded slowly. "Then take her place." Sawyer's expression softened. Sad, almost pleading. "Please. If you say no, he'll take me again." Daniel's breath hitched. "Sawyer, no. You're going home." The man extended a pale hand toward Daniel. Shadow lunged, and the man vanished again, dissolving into mist that swirled between the trees. A whisper scraped Daniel's ear. "Follow, or she is lost." Sawyer's body went rigid. Her eyes rolled back. Then, like a puppet pulled by invisible strings, she walked toward the ravine's edge. "Sawyer!" Daniel sprinted, grabbing her in time, pulling her away from the drop. Her small body trembled violently in his arms. "He says if I don't follow," she whispered, "someone else will." "Not happening," Daniel said fiercely. A low groan rose from the ravine, deep, resonant, as if the earth itself was shifting. Snow cracked. Trees bent inward. A darkness bled through the roots. Thick, oily shadows stretching across the ground like hands reaching upward. Shadow barked, backing up. Jack whispered, terrified, "Daniel, what is that?" Daniel didn't know, but he knew what he had to do. "Stay behind me," he said, lifting Sawyer in his arms. "We're leaving." The shadows surged. Something tall and thin rose from the darkness, reforming into the man's shape. Only now he wasn't gaunt. He was towering, distorted, his limbs too long, his face too smooth. His voice boomed through the woods, vibrating the air. "Follow." Daniel clutched Sawyer tighter. "No." The man's form shuddered, twisted, screeched, "You owe me." Daniel stepped back, boots skidding on the snow. "I owed Emily," he said, shaking, breath breaking. "And I failed her. But I'm not failing this time." The shadowy figure lunged. Daniel dove sideways, shielding Sawyer. Shadow sprang, teeth bared, snapping at the shifting darkness. The creature shrieked, flinching, dissolving under the dog's assault as if unable to hold shape. Shadow barked, relentless. Daniel stood, pulling Sawyer and Jack toward the path. "Go! Move!" The forest groaned, but something changed. The shadows recoiled from Shadow's snarling form, shrinking, curling away. Shadow barked once more. The creature screamed. And then, like fog burned by sunlight, it was gone. The woods fell silent. Sawyer breathed normally again. Jack collapsed, sobbing. Daniel sank to his knees, Shadow pressing against him, tail slowly wagging. Sawyer whispered, "Is it over?" Daniel swallowed hard. He looked at the ravine, at the fading traces of darkness. He wanted to say yes. He needed to say yes. But he remembered the man's final words. "You were 10 the first time you followed me." That meant the man, or whatever he was, didn't die. He merely retreated. Waiting. Daniel wrapped an arm around Sawyer. "For now," he whispered. "You're safe for now." They started toward the cabin. The wind quieted. Snow fell softly again. But before leaving the ravine, Daniel glanced back one last time. A small purple mitten. Emily's mitten lay where he dropped it, except now it was dry, warm, and placed gently on clean snow, as if set there by a careful hand. A quiet gift, or a warning. Shadow nudged Daniel's leg, whining softly. Daniel exhaled, steadying himself. "Let's go home, boy." And together, they walked out of the woods. 3 survivors and 1 dog, leaving behind a silence that didn't feel empty, but waiting.